here, Jesse, with us tonight. I'm Peaches Calhoun, and I'm the founder, and Shatana is the president of CACBIG. Shatana.
Hi, Jesse. We've been speaking already. But yes, I'm the chapter president of the Columbus area chapter of Blacks in Government. And we do a lot of advocacy work and just voter engagement, voter registration drives, things like that, and just making sure the community is aware of what's going on with our local politics. So I'm really glad to have you and to have this discussion, informal discussion, but very important discussion.
Great. Well, I'm so glad to be here. I'll say hello. I'm Jesse Vogel, and I'm running for Columbus City Council in Columbus District 7. And one of the exciting things about this year and this race is that we have multiple candidates on the ballot in a primary. And so I'm thankful for both of you, Shatana and Peaches, to doing this work to engage the voters and help people understand what's on the ballot, what we can have the chance to vote for this year. So thank you for having me.
Yes, we're glad. We're definitely glad to have you because I recognized when I started Humanity First Ohio the need to be able to understand government again. If these times have proven anything, and I'm a lemon in lemonade type of person. You give me lemons, I make lemonade. But in these times, I find that we are our 5th grade civics class and all that stuff has got to come back to our mind, right? So we created Humanity First Ohio so that we can educate the community on how things work, Jesse. And so we're so happy to have you here with us and to talk about, maybe you can start off with why you decided to run for office.
Yeah, thanks, Peaches. I decided to run for office in large part because of the work that I've been doing over the past years as a legal services attorney representing low-income people across Central Ohio. And in that work, I've gotten to meet all kinds of people in every part of Columbus. Although my work has been in District 7, my office was at Thurman Street in German Village in the heart of District 7 when I worked for Legal Aid of Columbus, and I worked at the State House up the street downtown. But I met people across the city who are struggling to afford life here in Columbus and so struggling to continue to live here in Columbus. And, I love this city and I love, its diversity and all of the different kinds of people coming to this community. But I know we can do more as a city to make it work better for working people. And so that's why I decided to get into this and run, especially in this year when there's such challenges from Washington and from the State House down the street. I think it's more important than ever, like you said, to dig in and communicate and connect with our neighbors about what we can do to build a strong community.
You have a love for the city. I find that community work is heart work. And when your heart is where your treasure is stored up. So you loving the city is great to hear. I know that when you go to these events, you don't have much time to talk. You get like 20 minutes. And so, I guess, what is it that you want the community to know most about you, Jesse, that you don't get a chance to talk about when you go to these events because you got to hurry up or you're getting bombarded with questions? What is something that's on your heart that you really want the city of Columbus to know?
That's a nice question. I think that what I want the community to know is that, how excited I am about what we're doing here in this race. I think you heard maybe me talk a little bit at a previous event about some of the work I've done in the past. In the pandemic, I organized a project with neighbors that we call the Central Ohio Housing Action Network, where we brought volunteers together to show up for those most in need who were facing eviction by going straight to their doorsteps with a little information and a friendly face trying to say, we know you're facing some hard times and we don't think it's right what's happening to you, that you're having to go through this eviction process during this global pandemic, when our courts decided to stay open in the midst of a shutdown. And, that experience showed me how we can bring people together around issues that matter, and build something together, build some knowledge, build a shared sense of purpose, build a little bit of more courage about what it's possible to accomplish with one another. And in many ways, that was a hard time. In this moment, one thing we have the privilege to do in this election is to be organizing with one another, building relationships in every neighborhood that may one day serve as, points of contact or ways to track risks to our immigrant communities from ICE, or from federal authorities. And, we're continuing to build that network, and you're building that network, obviously, Peaches, in your role on Area Commission. And we're going to have to keep on building, our community safety. We need to keep ourselves safe.
Perfect. Becky.
It's your turn to ask the question, Shatana.
I do. So I want to pivot, and I know we haven't been speaking on immigrants a lot, but let's talk about our seniors. So I know this is kind of maybe above the city scope, but I just want to, gauge your mind. So when we have our seniors who are in I can't think of the name, it came to me too fast, like low income housing or subsidized housing, and they're threatening to take it. Is there any actions that the city could take to kind of help keep them protected or safe for at least a period of time while we figure something out at the federal level? Or is there any actions that we can take here locally that we can do to protect our seniors?
Yeah. Well, Shatana, in my canvassing, knocking doors in every neighborhood, one of the biggest questions that comes up from seniors about housing stability is they're talking about rising property taxes and being at risk of foreclosure because of being unable to pay rising property taxes. So that's maybe one angle to your question. I think there's a couple of pieces you may be talking about, but that's maybe one piece, is that our senior citizens are under threat, under challenge,
under attack, right?
Yeah, because of rising costs, including in property taxes. One thing I'd like to look at is working with the county in the way that has been done in Cuyahoga County and actually also in Cincinnati. I'm back.
You're back. We're glad you're back. So you were telling us, where's a good point to pick up on that? Because it's a good point about our senior citizens, and cutting the funds that fund seniors to be able to live in senior centers and nursing homes. Where would they go? We're already overpopulated in the nursing home, so it brings about, we bringing mom and dad back, having granddad and grandma come to the house with us. It changes the whole ecosystem. And so we want, like Shatana, to know, what are you going to do? I know we don't have serious answers about this right now. Every day
Right.
something new, but I mean, what do you?
And I think it's past the city scope, but it's just nice to kind of hear some ideas that we could present from the council to the higher level to say, hey, consider this, but coming from the appropriate channels, because sometimes they only want to listen to people in certain places,
Yeah, look, I mean, we live in this unprecedented time in some ways, and the core social service safety net is under attack in ways from the federal government. And so, I'm really worried about what would happen if there were cuts like the ones you mentioned to nursing homes, to Social Security, to Medicaid and Medicare, things that our seniors and low-income neighbors depend upon. And
right.
If that happens, we need to take unprecedented steps as a city. And, I don't know yet what that would look like. But I think what it does require is looking carefully at every part of our city operation, the resources we have here, and asking tough questions about what we can do with what we have.
Measures are you going to take to prioritize Columbus's housing affordability crisis.
Yeah, thanks, Peaches. I mean, this is the number one issue for me, is thinking about how do we tackle housing affordability. And I think it's right that we need more housing. We also need tenant protections to make sure those in our housing are not taken advantage of by landlords that are not operating according to law. And then finally, the piece I think is important is that our city should, our government should do what it needs to do and what the market is not able to do. So right now we use tax incentives and use our public dollars to help build some housing. That's good. I'd like to see us dial dollars in specifically to a revolving fund that's targeted at building affordable units that are truly affordable to low-income, most vulnerable people in Columbus, so that we can make sure we have a backstop so that no one in our community is forced to be on the streets because they can't afford rent. So some other communities have done this. Montgomery County, Maryland is one, where they've said, we're going to use our public dollars, which we have, by the way. We're raising money on the bond market based on authority that the voters voted for in 2019, 2022. And we could invest that and say, we're going to make sure to build some permanently affordable housing where the rents raised through that money come back into the fund so that we don't waste it, we invest it. I also think we could develop
like a revolving fund, kind of like a revolving, nice.
Exactly, right? I mean, right now, if it goes out, we give it to a developer to build something. Maybe they do a tax credit deal where the affordability protections expire, after 15 or 30 years. That's public dollars. Why don't we make sure that it's used always for the public good?
That makes sense. Good. Thank you. And I wanted to, before I ask my question, I just wanted to highlight. So I live in like the Reynoldsburg Blacklick area, but I'm considered Columbus. And there's an area over here where they call it, Miss Peaches calls it Tent Row, where we have like a huge homeless community or homeless camps. And a lot of my neighbors, they frequently complain. They're just angry about trying to think of ways that we could pivot instead of, get those people out of my community. No, let's help them get into a place where they're safe, where they're warm, where they can have a nice warm meal. And listening to some of your initiatives, I'm thinking we could possibly, and I don't know where the funds would come from, but maybe put up a home or a housing for homeless people, to kind of similar to like the YWA shelter, but something where they can go just to get on their feet and get situated. So it's cold here in the wintertime. It's still cold in the spring. So I'm sure they're not comfortable, but life happens. So I just wanted to add that to what you just said, as far as like keeping it in the house of revolving funds and making sure it benefits the public, because even though they're homeless, they're still the citizens of Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
But when you talked about the revolving funds, the question that I asked was, your campaign, you're raising your funding, you're using your grassroots efforts. How do you plan to maintain transparency and ensure that your campaign remains like transparent, accountable to those funds? And then how do we remain transparent if you're elected into the position, that money raised benefits what is designated to benefit?
Yeah. Well, I think accountability and transparency are really important. And our city council has an oversight role to look at, it's appropriating money, giving money to causes and to parts of the government. It has a role to make sure those dollars are spent right, and that those dollars are really benefiting the people of Columbus. So I take that seriously on council if elected. I've been a lawyer for low-income people. The work we do is we're often up against a legal system that's stacked against our clients. And so the work we do is sometimes kind of awkward. It's to stand up and say, wait, judge, hold on. You got to slow down. Like, we got to take a break. My client needs something. We have to stand up and sometimes be that kind of advocate who's asking some tough questions. I bring that role, I think, to city government to say, hey, we're going to give this tax abatement here. What are we going to get for it? And did we get it? you know?
Right.
And if not, can we claw that back? Because those are my taxpayers, right? I mean, so I think we need that on council. I take that there. In terms of my campaign and accountability and transparency, we're raising all from individuals, not from corporations or from corporate PACs. And we're raising, our campaign is powered by people who are showing up, not just to pitch in. Median contribution is $50. They're not just pitching in at that level. They're also showing up with me to knock some doors. And so, I find accountability is real when it's my neighbor, my friend who's showing up with me. I have to be able to answer to them. So I carry that with me into elected office.
Thank you.
I agree. And when we talk about finances and affordable homes, of course, we got to know where is the funding coming, right? So I'm a big advocate for unions and union jobs.
Yes.
My question is, you've highlighted the importance of bringing more union jobs to Columbus. In sectors where unionization is low, what strategies would you employ to encourage the growth of unionized positions?
Well, I think that, one important thing is that as advocates and elected officials and candidates, we have to show up for organized labor when they ask for help. So that's been a hallmark of this campaign since the beginning. In January, I had a friend who's part of the stagehands union, and they had a situation on campus where the last minute campus that manages the Mershon Theater there had brought in ununionized labor from Cincinnati, and they said, come out and picket. And so I joined them, and showed up with them and brought some coffee and donuts, because I think we need to be standing visible with labor on every front. I think we on city council can do a better job of holding accountable the people we know and have relationships with, to make sure that they're standing with labor too. And city council can do a better job of holding accountable the people we know and have relationships with, to make sure that they're standing with labor too, and they're not quashing unionization efforts. Recently there's been a deal about the airport. We're getting this new airport in Columbus. But unfortunately, that's being done without a strong project labor agreement in place that would protect workers and provide wage guarantees for folks there. And I think that's because our council members haven't, been successful at standing up, and holding accountable the folks on the airport board. I'd like to do differently around that.
Thank you. So you kind of opened up my next question, and take your time. If it's something that you just don't, just pivot if you want to. But what do you feel could be different with the current city council? Like what about city council now do you feel could be better in the future if you're appointed in that position, or changes that you see that you feel like may need to be changed?
Yeah, I think, look, it's a tough job, and, I have a lot of respect for a lot of the members of Columbus City Council who have given themselves into this work.
Right.
So, I have good relationships that I'm thankful for with many members of council. And I understand the challenging positions that they're in a lot of the time. I think the one difference, that I'd put onto, council, I think is kind of my community relationships and, my sense of how we get things done by organizing neighbors for a common goal. So I go back to what I said earlier about the work I did to organize with one another during the pandemic,
right,
for people in need, and the campaign we're building that's powered by hundreds of individuals across the city. I'd like to be on council and bring those people with me into conversations about how we shape policy even before the policy gets voted on at the end of the day at a council hearing.
I think that is very well stated. In a world that we're currently in, the climate that we're currently in across the nation, it seems like communication is lacking. And I will say, I appreciate and support everyone that's on council, and this is a selfless position. And I know it's very hard work, so their hard work doesn't go unnoticed. But I agree. We want to engage with the people. And you see at the national level, they're instructed not to talk to their constituents. They're being told whatever misinformation is going around, but that's not how it should be. So the fact that you would like to bring people with you and keep that momentum, it kind of reassures the community that you do care about their best interest, because one, you want to listen to what they have to say. Even if it's something you can't fix, you'll listen and you'll try. And I think that's really what we need going forward in this current climate, and even past this. Like, it's so pivotal. It's important.
Yeah, we have to be honest with one another. I mean, in such a hard environment, things are going to change. There's going to be challenge. We have to be honest and listen to one another in order to get hard things done, I think. And, it speaks to the work you all are doing and trying to set up these forums. This is an example of what needs to happen, what we need more of, I think, in Columbus.
We do, for sure. I agree. I totally agree.
We do, for sure, because it's one thing to stand in a room and we listen to the speech we've heard rehearsed, the people have rehearsed. It's another thing to have a relationship in the sense that we see your mannerisms, asking of the questions. What happens if we ask a tough question? What do you clinch up? Or you can tell so much by people's body language and getting to know them. And I will say, Jesse, that when I was at the candidates night the other night representing Humanity First Ohio, I can say that it was really nice and refreshing to see you there. You didn't seem nervous. You were right in there with everybody else. And that can be respected when you can have the people from the community that are looking for the job that can relate with the people. So that's important in Columbus, to have people there that are going to represent the people, that can come down out of North High Street into the city. And just be with everybody else. I think Columbus needs to have that. Like Shatana said, we have a lot of candidates, or we have a lot of people who are elected that show up or don't show up because, I don't know, out of fear or what have you. But I can tell you this, to our viewers and to everyone, is that during election time, what do they say? Vote down ballot, vote down ballot. Well, we are in a time where now we need to look up ballot, so that we can make sure that things are taken. I give you your kudos, Jesse, for doing an excellent job at the candidates night. I have one last question for Jesse, and then I'll let you go on. But Joyce Beatty usually identifies that I ask the tough questions. People ask the tough questions. But I have to ask you a tough question it's about navigating political endorsements. So considering that the 9 sitting Columbus City Council members have endorsed your opponent, Tiara Ross, how do you plan to build coalitions and effectively push your agenda if elected?
Well, Peaches, it's disheartening, of course, to see folks come out for my opponent, when I'm working so hard to run a strong race. But I have to respect, where they are and the relationships they have, and certainly do. We can have different viewpoints about how we get to a stronger, better Columbus where more people can thrive and build successful lives. That's okay. And I believe I'm running a really strong race that's going to win. And that's because we're getting out every weekend and knocking the doors and talking to hundreds of people across this city who are looking for leadership and who frankly are looking for some change. And they see that in the work that we're doing and building together. And I'm excited about what we're going to get done, in the next 5 weeks till May 6th, and then again in November. And I believe that if elected, we're going to come back on the other side, and I'm going to sit down with the elected other officials on city council, and we're going to have a ton of work to do together to address housing affordability, make transit more successful, more reliable, cheaper, and find a way to universal pre-K to support kids, to support immigrants across the city. We have a lot to work on and shared interests, and I think we have different approaches, but that's going to actually be a strength, I think, to our city council rather than a hindrance.
I think that's phenomenal. And while I'm gonna jump on this one, Shatana, I'm gonna let you close this out to be done with it. But while he was saying that, I got the great idea. Like, okay, what if I know that maybe you have or you haven't got a chance to sit down and get to know the other council people just on a conversation base. Seems like everything is so professional and we follow the protocol and whatnot. But if you could talk to them right now, just without all the fancy cameras, without the crowds, and really just what would you want to tell them? What would you want them to know?
I would ask them to come knock some doors with me and talk to my neighbors with me about how the city is going and hear from them straight. I think it's so exciting what we're doing. And, I invite everyone I meet to come join us because I think this is the work we have to be doing in this moment. So that's what I would ask them. Come join us.
Awesome. You're on mute, Peach.
Oh, yes. We will definitely do what we can to make sure that we're getting the word out for all our candidates so that everyone can make a sound decision. So Shatana, I throw the ball to you for Jesse, and you can ask your question. And
so I don't really have a question. It's more of a comment. And I want to thank you and I want to commend you for this selfless act. Like, you're doing this on behalf of your community, and it takes a lot. And I'm sure there's a lot of stress at the end of the day when you lay down in your bed, but it's beautiful work. So I first want to commend you for that. And I know you said you're Jewish, but God's going to bless you for this. This is a blessing in itself. So cheers to that. You mentioned pre-K, universal pre-K. So I'm a mom. I have 4 kids in school. They're cutting a lot of money to the school. And I know city council and school board are 2 different entities, but is there any way that city council it could be where city council creates some sort of like citywide tutoring in different districts for the lack of money that's going to the schools, like open up rec centers to have, additional tutoring for these kids, because teachers, we're going to give them their flowers right now. They're underpaid and they're overworked. And a lot of people don't show them enough recognition and appreciation. So I don't want to put more on them than they can bear, but how can city council kind of step in and fill in where the Department of Education is cutting them short?
Yeah. Well, I think about that a lot, Shatana. I mean, I think I can't be where I am without strong education and, think back to my childhood and, the importance that amazing educators had in my life. And I want that for every person in the city of Columbus. I think that city government can do more to address the challenges our public schools are under. One thing I point out is right now, Columbus teachers who are members of Columbus Education Association are in contract negotiations over their future contract. So one thing I'm trying to track is, what are the teachers asking for, and what are things that the teachers are asking for that city council can help, bolster, so that we can take some of the pain off of the school district in sort of what's needed to make this a great district where teachers can teach and kids can learn. I think that I love your idea, Shatana, about what can we do with the rec centers to increase tutoring capacity. I'd like to think about that with you and learn about that, think that through. I also think about, pre-K is one, because that gets students into the school buildings and gets them success. So that seems like a clear no-brainer. But we have to be stronger advocates on council, standing up and saying, part of the plan for growth in Columbus requires strong public schools, including a strong Columbus City school system.
I agree. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, that was all the questions that I had. Thank you so much, Jesse. I am going to hand it over to Peaches. Do you have anything?
Well, we hope to see you, Jesse, at the tea. We have a tea coming up and it's going to serve a good purpose. You were talking about stress, right? So stress and burnout are big issues on the community right now. And we have Dr. Deanna that's going to be coming to talk to us about tools on how we can reduce stress and burnout and be interactive with us. So we hope to see you at the T, Jesse. We'll be downtown Westerville. But we thank you so much for coming tonight. We want you to know that Humanity First is all about just plain and simple. Humanity first. There's no backstory. There's no, hidden agenda. We just believe that everybody belongs at the table and deserves to have a voice. And so we are so glad that you shared your voice with us tonight. And keep up with us. Post the video. Let us know if there's anything that we can do to get any communication out for your team, as we will for everyone. And we will see you on the ground floor.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Peaches and
You
Chicago.
are welcome. You are welcome. Thank you, Jesse. And I'll see you around for sure.
Sounds good.
And remember, everybody, Humanity First Ohio, always.
Always.
Right. Some great, interesting points about keeping the community safe, about having a care in your both personal life and an investment in your work life.
Right.
And I think that is really going to help his role in this position. I mean, what do you think?
I really like, especially talking about the seniors, because I have seniors in my family that I'm concerned about, right? So thinking of a way that can help them in a time of need. I mean, it's kind of sensitive to me because, like, my grandmother's talking about she's going to get up and get a job. No, grandma, you're not. Absolutely not. No, ma'am. But the fact that this is something that some may consider just to survive, like, we need options, we need resources, and hearing that options similar to Cuyahoga County and in Cincinnati would be